So I realised that this is going to be another video about the behind the scenes stuff, talking about the critical reception of Star Wars, the finances, all the online stuff. And I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but I do promise you we've got some interesting videos coming up, a few more Star Wars what ifs. I'm getting back to aimless articles, and up next I have a video talking about my favourite starships. So by all means stick around for those if this isn't your cup of tea. But I do want to discuss something that I saw online earlier today, because I found it very interesting, because it presents a fantastic dichotomy about Star Wars itself. And it's a report from The Hollywood Reporter that I saw on Twitter. I've gone in and read the article, and it's discussing everything from, way back when Disney first purchased the franchise, and it's analysing whether Disney has done a good job with the franchise as a whole. And again, we know over the last couple of years there has been a very, very toxic kind of, environment on social media when it comes to Star Wars. Even if it is just a small minority of people, they're being very vocal about it, they're being very aggressive about it, and it's kind of escalated in the last couple of months with the Acolyte being cancelled. Because now not only do you have on one side of the extreme, you've got the people saying Star Wars is dead, DEI is ruining everything. Now you've got another side who are equally angry under the whole Renew the Acolyte hashtag. And that's not saying one side is worse or better than the other. I consider them both kind of niche extremes, but one is sort of different to the other, but they're both kind of angry and loud at the moment. I still subscribe to the fact that most people sit in the middle, don't really talk about Star Wars that much online, keep their opinions to themselves. And this article actually indicates that they are generally still connecting with Star Wars as a franchise, and they're still generally enjoying it. So, as I've mentioned, The Hollywood Reporter has been talking about, the whole franchise, analysing it from top to bottom, and it's a fairly well-written article. It's fairly well balanced. It talks about the issues with, the critical reception over the last couple of years, which I agree, Star Wars has not been, perfect. No franchise is perfect. No franchise hits a home run with every film or, TV show. But Star Wars, especially in the last few years, has been inconsistent. Now, it's not just a Disney issue. Ever since the prequels, Star Wars has been really inconsistent in its quality. And I think some people tend to have these rose-tinted spectacles, and they look back on the prequels, and because it's George Lucas, they think, oh no, it was just, George's way of telling a story. But realistically, back when the prequels came out, there was a very similar environment where there was a very toxic element of fans who hated the prequels and would launch attacks on the people involved. Again, a very, very minority element, but a very verbal element nonetheless. And we have the same thing now. It's just because social media has expanded so much that, it seems like it's a bigger thing than it actually is now, but it's not. In my mind, it's still a minority, just a vocal minority. So consistency has always been an issue. George Lucas, Disney, doesn't matter. Star Wars has always had ups and downs of its quality. But it's become a bit more prominent over the last few years as we ventured into the realm of TV, because we're getting more content. So the issue becomes a bit more prominent. And now I will admit straight up that I didn't think The Acolyte was great. I thought it had a lot of problems. It definitely had some really good elements to it, but I don't think it was good enough. Certainly not given the budget that it had. I made a video last time around talking about the budget being much higher than, what it was believed to be at $230 million. And for that amount of money, we just did not get enough quality or quantity out of the show. So I'm in agreement. And, I've got mixed opinions on all of the shows that have come out under Disney's kind of reign. And, I think that's where most people tend to sit. Some things you'll really like, some things you might not like, some things you'll feel indifferent about. And certainly, the people who seem to hate everything will always hate everything. The people who love everything will always love everything. That's just the way things will always be. But in this article, we're looking at the financials. That's where the really interesting information comes out here and kind of gives us a little bit of an insight into the current state of not just the fandom, but the franchise as a whole. Because we're getting told Star Wars is dead. It doesn't have a future. And creatively, there are a few questions, and rightly so, because you look at the formula, you look at what's coming up, we don't have a lot really scheduled in. The last few years, we've gotten 1 to 2 live-action shows every year. Now, after Skeleton Crew, we really don't have anything solid on the books. We've got The Mandalorian and Grogu coming up in terms of the film, and I think that's how Disney are probably going to end up swinging back, is they're going to end up swinging back to films, and focusing a little bit less on TV shows. So when we look at the article here, it says that according to their sources, and again, I'd be hypocritical to say that, with no named sources, we should take everything with a pinch of salt. However, Hollywood Reporter generally is quite reliable, and it's not the linchpin of the article. It's simply mentioned in there. But it says that according to their sources, in the last year, 2023, Star Wars as a whole made $1 billion in merchandising sales. $1 billion in 1 year. And that was a year when there was no films, when again there was a lot of turmoil in the online community, and if you were to subscribe only to the online community, you would think that the franchise was dying and no one was interested and no one watched. Actually, when you look at it, $1 billion in merchandising sales is insane for a non-film year. In fact, considering the fact that there's not been a film for over 4 years, that's a great figure. And when you look at that number, 1 billion, that is enough to cover the production costs of every single sequel film and still leave you with $100 million left over. Now granted, that doesn't include the marketing budgets, just the production costs, but still every single film. That's crazy. To put it another way, it covers the costs of every live action show in the last 2 to 3 years. Whether it's The Mandalorian, The Acolyte, Andor, Ahsoka, those 4 shows. It's enough to cover those 4 shows. 1 year just on merchandising. So anything else on the top is absolute profit. So whilst that doesn't justify spending $230 million on a show like The Acolyte, it does show you that the franchise is far from dead or dying. It's actually alive and well from a financial perspective. Because on top of that, you've then got things like the video game sales, the subscriptions to Disney Plus. It's still got a lot of income. And that's why it's difficult with Disney, because you don't get breakdowns of, each individual franchise. You just get the overall reports for, the company's finances. So it's easy to look at something like stock price or profit loss for Disney as a whole and associate that just purely with Star Wars, when in actual fact it's not. And I don't think we'll ever get the exact numbers, because I don't think Disney would ever want to reveal them, directly. And I would love to see the breakdown of these merchandise sales, because what it says to me is that people are still connecting with the franchise. If they really truly hated it, if they were truly turned off, like all these online people would have you try and believe, people wouldn't be spending money on merchandise. They wouldn't be interested in buying stuff, related to Star Wars. But there's enough people out there that $1 billion in sales happened in one singular year. And so again, that says to me that there is a baseline of audience, and it's the majority of the audience who still connect, still enjoy Star Wars enough to want to be involved in the franchise and watch things. It doesn't mean everything is rosy. It doesn't mean everything is great. It doesn't mean that every show is a success or a hit. But it means that the foundations are strong. That, Lucasfilm has done a good enough job in establishing a foundation where they can afford to have a couple of blips. I'm not saying that they can continue to have blips, but they can storm through them. And so now we find ourselves in a situation where, again, the online community, the extremes are starting to bubble up. They're starting to become very vocal, and they will try and convince you that all is not well, when in actual fact no one knows the exact truth. But if these reports are to be believed, then the financials are much stronger than we would have believed possible, because it shows $1 billion in merchandise sales alone in 1 year is enough to cover the loss of any of these shows. It's enough to cover the costs of Disney Plus. And I think it's clear that Disney are getting a return on their money. And I've always said that. I've said, a report earlier in March said that they'd made $12 billion since they took over the franchise in 2011. Now, on the face of it, they bought it for $4 billion. They then went and spent, at least another $1 billion on the productions for the sequel films, plus whatever the marketing cost was, plus the other films, plus all the Disney Plus stuff they've had to do. So we don't know the exact costs that they've had associated with the franchise. It might be more than 12 billion. It might not. But 12 billion in the space of 13 years is not a bad return. And that's going to continue. They're going to continue to generate that income. So eventually, if they're not already in overall profit, they will hit overall profit, especially if they're making $1 billion in merchandising sales every single year. Now, again, I'd love to see the breakdown of the numbers. We're not going to get that because it would tell us the demographics of the people buying this. It's probably mostly young kids, which is what Star Wars has always appealed to. Young kids are always going to love and enjoy Star Wars, no matter how much you, as an adult, might not. No matter how much you think Star Wars might be getting ruined, there's kids out there that enjoy it. Because they enjoy, the space adventures, the fantasies, they enjoy the space battles, they enjoy the characters. They don't look into it and go, oh, this character is a female, this character is black, this character is gay. They're kids, they just enjoy it because it's Star Wars. And that's what really everyone should be trying to do. So again, I don't think wokeness or DEI is killing Star Wars. No agendas are killing Star Wars. Star Wars isn't dying. Sure, it's not flourishing like it should be or could be, but it's not dying. And again, these reports say that financially, at least, it's on strong ground. But again, take everything with a pinch of salt. Things change quickly in this industry. I want Star Wars to succeed going forward. Critically, it has a lot of work to do. Creatively, it has a lot of work to do. In terms of quality, we do need something different. I hope that the upcoming few years sees us move back towards films and good quality films with some good shows sprinkled in between. We need to find the right balance. And I think that they will find that eventually. Just these are the teething problems. These are the teething issues that we need to get through first. But they can more than, they can more than survive it. They're doing more than surviving it if this is all true. They are flourishing still. Maybe not as much as they should, but they are.